Thought for the day. Don't believe everything you think.
Welcome to 7 Minutes for Yourself. I'm Christina Aina, and I'm so glad you've joined me for what I believe will be 7 of the most enriching minutes of your day. Let's take this time to reconnect with ourselves and improve our well-being.
In today's episode of 7 Minutes for Yourself, we delve into the reasons why distorted thinking attracts us and discuss ways to reject those thoughts and replace them with more beneficial ones. Have a listen.
Everyone says be positive, but almost everyone spends some time thinking negatively. Why is that? Distorted thinking kind of screws us over in the long run, but we do it because in the short term it has some benefits. So the first benefit of negative thinking is that it's comfortable. So have you ever heard someone say, I'd rather expect to fail and be pleasantly surprised than expect to succeed and be disappointed? Negative thinking is just another subtle way to attempt to avoid pain. We seek to protect ourselves from disappointment by expecting the worst or by labeling ourselves as broken. So let me give you an example. Let's start with the first cognitive distortion, all or nothing thinking. So James really wants to get a better job. He knows that to do this, he needs to write a good resume. He works the evening shift, so he has a lot of time during the day to do it. But each day, he starts off by watching a lot of gaming videos on YouTube. Once I checked his screen report, and he was spending 40 hours a week watching gaming videos on YouTube. So when his morning is over and he's watched all these gaming videos, he thinks, I should work on my resume. But now he only has 2 hours before work and he still has to shower and get ready. So even though he would have some time, he might not be able to finish. So he thinks, I've completely wasted my morning. My whole day is ruined. Why try? It's not worth the effort. And now that he's convinced himself that it's pointless to put in effort, he's also excused himself from doing the hard work of figuring out his resume. His all or nothing thinking protects him from feeling like he needs to work, but it also leaves him feeling depressed. When I made James sit down and do his resume in session, it took like 30 minutes, right? He did have time, but this all or nothing thinking protects him from, taking that risk, taking that vulnerability, putting in that emotional effort that it requires to, do hard things. If you look carefully at each type of cognitive distortion, you'll see that it does something for you. It has a secondary gain, a benefit that in the long run really isn't that helpful. Distorted thinking helps us avoid responsibility, prevent risk, or try not to feel so vulnerable. This is called a secondary gain. We don't notice that we're doing it, but it does something for us. Cognitive distortions may make you feel vindicated, but in the long run, thinking this way leaves you miserable. Okay, second benefit of distorted thinking is it's easy. It takes little effort. Maybe we learned to think this way from a parent, or we developed this way of thinking to cope with stressors. But when this type of thinking is habitual, it changes from a defense mechanism to a paradigm. The whole way that we see the world becomes distorted. And this leads to depression and anxiety and anger, loneliness, and unachieved dreams. So again, short-term avoidance leads to long-term suffering. The side benefits we get from negative thinking make it hard to let go of. It's often not helpful to say, just be positive, because people just don't believe or don't want to risk believing the positive thoughts. If we want to overcome distorted or negative thinking, we have to recognize our thinking, explore what it does for us, and replace it with more truthful or more helpful thinking. Think about a recent time you got really emotional, or you can use this activity the next time you do. So we're going to use James's example again to look for these distortions and get started changing them. One of the running themes in James' thinking was that he is a loser. He was a failure, that he was never going to be successful or able to achieve his dreams of becoming a pilot. He would tell himself, I'm such a loser. I'm never going to amount to anything. I fail at everything. Okay, so the first thing to do is to notice and to name. This is learning to identify how you think. Now, Because we don't know we're thinking falsely, it's really helpful to get the help of a therapist or a friend, or write down how you're thinking about a situation. So in therapy, I would help James identify the cognitive distortions in his thinking. When he says, "My life will always be a failure," I would help him notice that he's catastrophizing. When he says, "I'm such a loser," I would help him notice that he was labeling himself. When he says, "I fail at everything," I would help him notice he's using black and white thinking. So then next, check for distortions. So for example, start to catch yourself when you say words like always or never, or when you're making assumptions. And then you can say, "Oh, that is black and white thinking." In therapy, I help James notice each time he says always or never. Over the course of a couple sessions, James started to notice himself talking this way, and then he would start to catch himself. So then instead of saying, "I fail at everything," he starts saying, "I messed up that job interview, but maybe the next one will go better." Or, "At least I have more opportunities to interview for other jobs." Third, explore, what does this thought do for you? Is there any benefit? Does this thought give you a sense of control? Does it help you avoid taking responsibility? Or does it protect you from feeling vulnerable? James was able to see that most of his distorted thinking just helped him to stop trying. It excused him from putting in the effort to go to a trade school or to work on his resume. And it gave him an excuse to just spend more time gaming. When James was able to see how his mind was distorting things, it made him kind of mad. And that helped him get motivated to do something different.
That concludes today's episode of 7 Minutes for Yourself. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Today and every day with your kiddo is a gift. Enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in.